Rachel Monroe thought she had found comfort in the arms of a kind stranger named Mark, but the man who helped her grieve was the same one who had murdered her husband. Rachel Monroe had always lived a quiet life in the suburbs of Ohio. Her days were predictable, filled with routines she shared with her husband, Daniel. They had been married for 12 years, and while their relationship wasn't perfect, it was steady. Daniel worked as a mechanic, and Rachel ran a small online business selling handmade candles. They had no children, just a golden retriever named Max who followed them everywhere. One rainy evening, Daniel took Max out for a walk and never came back. Hours passed before police knocked on Rachel's door. Daniel had been struck by a car in a hit-and-run. The impact was fatal. No witnesses, no cameras, no license plate. Just tire marks and shattered glass. Rachel was numb. The funeral came and went in a blur. Friends offered support, but grief made her retreat. Weeks turned into months. Rachel stopped answering calls. She barely left the house. Her business slowed. She spent nights scrolling through grief forums, looking for someone who understood. That's when she met Mark. His profile said he was a retired paramedic from Florida. He messaged her after she posted about losing Daniel. His words were kind, thoughtful, and oddly specific. Mark told her he'd lost someone too. He said he knew how it felt to wake up alone, to hear silence where laughter used to be. Rachel felt seen. They began chatting daily. He asked about Daniel, about the accident, about her life before the tragedy. Rachel found herself opening up. Mark never pushed, but he always seemed to ask the right questions. He never sent photos, claiming he was self-conscious about scars from a fire. He avoided video calls, saying his internet was unreliable. Rachel didn't mind. His words were enough. He made her feel less alone. She started smiling again, even laughing. Her friends noticed the change, but she kept Mark a secret. Rachel's connection with Mark deepened quickly. Their chats became the highlight of her day. He messaged her every morning and checked in at night. His words were warm, thoughtful, and always seemed to echo her emotions. He asked about her routines, her memories with Daniel, and how she was coping. Rachel found comfort in his attention. Mark claimed to be a retired paramedic from Florida. He said he'd seen loss up close and understood grief better than most. Rachel believed him. He never pushed her to move on, but gently encouraged her to find peace. His messages were filled with empathy and strange familiarity. They never spoke on video. Mark said he had scars from a fire and preferred to stay off camera. Rachel didn't mind. His words felt more real than most people's faces. He described his home, his garden, and even sent photos of sunsets he claimed were taken from his porch. Rachel began to feel alive again. She started walking Max more often, reopened her candle shop, and even joined a local book club. Her friends noticed the change, but she kept Mark a secret. He felt too personal, too fragile to share. Mark often asked about Daniel's accident. He wanted details, where it happened, what time, what Daniel was wearing. Rachel thought he was just trying to understand her pain. She didn't question it. One evening, Mark sent her a playlist of songs he said reminded him of her. Rachel listened to it on repeat. She felt seen, understood, and strangely safe. But something began to shift. Mark's questions grew more specific. He asked about the police report, whether there were any suspects, and if Rachel had kept any of Daniel's belongings. She brushed it off as curiosity. Then came the gifts. A book about healing after loss. A candle that smelled like pine, Daniel's favorite. Rachel was touched, but also confused. She had never told Mark about the pine scent. She started to wonder how much he knew. Had she mentioned it in passing? Had he guessed? Rachel stared at the photo, her pulse quickening. It was taken outside a diner just weeks before Daniel's death. In the background stood a man, partially obscured, but something about him felt familiar. She zoomed in and saw a tattoo on his forearm, a black snake wrapped around a dagger. Her breath caught. Mark had described having that exact tattoo during one of their early chats. She tried to dismiss the thought. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe the tattoo was common. But doubt crept in. Mark had said he'd never been to Ohio. Yet the man in the photo was clearly there, just blocks from her home. Rachel opened more photos from that week, scanning backgrounds, faces, shadows. In another image, taken near the park, the same man appeared again. Same build, same posture, same tattoo. He wasn't just passing through. He had been watching. She felt sick. Her mind raced through every message Mark had sent. His questions about Daniel's routine, the accident, the street layout. At the time, They felt like concern. Now they felt like research. Rachel dug deeper. She searched online for tattoo databases, hoping to find a match. Hours passed. Then she found a mugshot from Florida. The man's name was Marcus Hale. Arrested for assault. Same tattoo. Same face. Her hands trembled. She compared the mugshot to the man in her photo. It was him. Mark was Marcus. He had lied about everything. His name, his past, his location. Rachel's grief turned to fear. She realized she had shared everything with him. Her address, her habits, her vulnerabilities. He knew her better than anyone. And he had been near Daniel before his death. She printed the photos and laid them out on the table. The timeline was clear. Marcus had been in town before Daniel died. He had inserted himself into her life after the funeral. Rachel couldn't ignore the signs anymore. She contacted a private investigator, sharing everything she had found. The photos, the messages, the mugshot. Rachel handed the investigator everything. Photos, messages, and the mugshot. He studied the tattoo, the timestamps, and the location tags. Within days, he confirmed what Rachel feared. Marcus Hale had been in Ohio the week Daniel died. The investigator traced Marcus's movements using public records and surveillance data. He had rented a car under a false name and stayed at a motel just 6 miles from Rachel's home. The motel clerk remembered him, said he kept to himself, paid in cash, and left suddenly. Rachel's heart sank. She had trusted this man, shared her grief, her memories, her routines. Now she realized he had been studying her. The investigator found more. Marcus had joined multiple grief forums under different names. In each case, he targeted women who had recently lost their partners. 2 other widows had spoken to him. One lost her husband in a fall, another in a drowning. Both deaths were ruled accidental. Marcus had never been charged. He moved often, used fake names, and left no trail. But the pattern was clear. He inserted himself into lives after tragedy, gained trust, and vanished. Rachel felt trapped. She had let him in. He knew her schedule, her habits, even her fears. She changed her locks, installed cameras, and stopped going out alone. The investigator advised her to cut contact. But Rachel wanted answers. She kept messaging Marcus, pretending nothing had changed. She asked about meeting in person. He hesitated, then agreed. Police were notified. They planned to intercept him the moment he arrived. Rachel felt sick with dread, but knew it was the only way. She cleaned her home, made it look welcoming. She lit candles, played soft music, and waited. Marcus texted that he was on his way. Officers hid nearby, watching every corner. Rachel sat by the window, heart pounding. When Marcus pulled up in a rental car, she froze. He stepped out, looked around, and walked toward the door. Before he could knock, police swarmed. The investigators' findings painted a chilling picture. Marcus Hale had a history of targeting grieving women. He joined forums under different names, always appearing shortly after a tragedy. His messages followed a pattern: sympathy, connection, then obsession. Rachel wasn't his first victim. In Michigan, a woman named Claire lost her husband in a fall from their balcony. Marcus had messaged her days later, posing as a grief counselor. They spoke for months. Claire never suspected anything. In Louisiana, another woman named Dana lost her husband in a boating accident. Marcus appeared again, this time as a retired firefighter. He offered comfort, sent gifts, and vanished once she began asking questions. The deaths were ruled accidental. No charges were filed. But Marcus had been nearby each time. He used fake names, prepaid phones, and cash rentals. He left no digital trail. Rachel's case fit the pattern perfectly. Daniel's death had no witnesses, no footage, no suspects. Marcus had inserted himself into her life with precision. The investigator tracked Marcus's movements. He had rented a car under a false identity and stayed in a motel near Rachel's home. He arrived days before Daniel's death and left the morning after. Rachel felt sick. She had trusted him, shared her pain, her memories, her routines. He knew everything. The investigator warned her, Marcus was dangerous. He didn't just manipulate emotions. He orchestrated tragedies. Rachel reviewed every message. She saw how he had guided her grief, shaped her thoughts, and kept her isolated. His words were calculated. She realized he had studied her before Daniel died. He knew when Daniel walked the dog, which streets he used, and how long he was gone. Marcus hadn't just comforted her. He had planned everything. Rachel felt violated. Her grief had been used against her. Her husband's death wasn't random. It was part of a pattern. The investigator shared his findings with police. Rachel sat by the window, her heart pounding. The house was quiet, but tension filled every corner. She had agreed to meet Marcus, pretending nothing had changed. Police were hidden nearby, ready to move the moment he arrived. She had cleaned the living room, lit candles, and placed a fresh cup of tea on the table. Everything looked normal. But inside, Rachel was unraveling. Marcus texted that he was close. She watched the street, waiting. A dark sedan pulled up. He stepped out, wearing a hoodie and sunglasses. He looked around, then walked toward the door. Before he could knock, officers surrounded him. He froze, hands raised. No struggle, no words. Rachel watched through the curtain, trembling. It was over. Police searched his car. Inside, they found gloves, a burner phone, and a printed map of her neighborhood. Notes marked Daniel's usual walking route. The evidence was overwhelming. DNA from the hit-and-run scene matched Marcus. At the station, he confessed. He had followed Daniel for days, learning his habits. On the night of the murder, he waited in his car. When Daniel passed, he accelerated. Marcus believed Rachel would be vulnerable. He planned to comfort her, gain her trust, and control her life. His confession was cold, calculated. No remorse. Rachel listened to the report, numb. The man she had trusted, who had comforted her in grief, had planned everything. Marcus was charged with murder and stalking. The case made headlines. Rachel stayed silent. She didn't speak to reporters. She didn't post online. She spent days alone, trying to understand how she had missed the signs. Her grief had blinded her. Her loneliness had made her vulnerable. But she had stopped him. She had faced the truth. Marcus was sentenced to life in prison. Rachel began to heal. Slowly, quietly. She changed her number, deleted her accounts, and moved to a new home. She kept one photo of Daniel on her desk. Marcus's confession left Rachel hollow. The man who had once comforted her through grief had planned her husband's death with chilling precision. He admitted to watching Daniel for days, learning his habits, and choosing the moment to strike. His motive wasn't rage or revenge, it was control. He wanted Rachel vulnerable, isolated, and dependent. The trial moved quickly. Evidence was overwhelming. The map, the burner phone, the DNA match, all pointed to Marcus. His history of targeting widows added weight. Prosecutors painted him as a predator who used grief as a weapon. Rachel attended every hearing, sitting quietly in the back. She didn't want revenge. She wanted truth. She wanted to understand how someone could twist empathy into manipulation. Marcus showed no emotion, no apology, no regret. His silence was louder than any words. When the verdict came, life in prison without parole, Rachel felt no relief. Just emptiness. She returned home, unsure how to rebuild. The house felt different. The silence heavier. She deleted her old accounts, changed her number, and moved to a smaller town. She kept only one photo of Daniel, tucked inside a drawer. Rachel didn't speak publicly. She didn't write a book or give interviews. But she did join a support group, not for grief, but for survivors of manipulation. She listened to others, shared her story in pieces, and slowly began to heal. Her trust in people was fractured, but not gone. She learned to spot red flags, to ask questions, to protect her space. Rachel never forgot Marcus's words, his gifts, his timing. But she also remembered her strength, the moment she saw the tattoo, the decision to investigate, the courage to face him. She had been a victim, but she had also been the reason he was caught. Years later, Rachel started a small blog under a different name. She wrote about grief, recovery, and the dangers of online deception. She never mentioned Marcus.